it's a process. That in
Of course.
itself is really a process. I mean, I'm 47 years old and I still feel like um I'm I'm trying to figure out who I am. I think that like it always that's going to be until we, go to the grave.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining the show this week. I'm super excited to introduce our guest as Raquel Borras. She was a big inspiration of mine to even get this show off the ground. She's a marketing manager in the mortgage industry, but more than that, she's the queen of goofiness. She spreads a lot of positivity on her social media, and I'm really excited for you guys to get to listen to a little bit of her story, what got her to where she is, and what it means to put yourself out there when it comes to personal branding and things like that. So remember to like, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're watching or listening. But let's dive right into the conversation with Raquel. I kind of wanted to just start with what you do. Like when you look at your Instagram, when you look at your LinkedIn, you
Yeah.
see things listed. But what do you consider your job right now? Like I know you're in the mortgage industry, but what is it that you do?
I know it's funny because so many people are like, what do you do exactly? I'm like, that's, I think the cool thing for me is that, yes, I am a technically employee 9 to 5 corporate job, but my actual role is, content creator, marketing, branding for our region in San Diego and all our loan officers. So just like I was able to have a presence on social media and have a brand and have that help me, essentially it's utilizing what I've learned and what I do now to help our loan officers gain visibility and essentially have a brand as well. So I get to do all the stuff that I was doing anyways, but I get to help other people do it. So that's why think people get confused, because in order to help them with their brand, I have to keep my brand up too, right? Like, I mean, you know
Yeah.
how they talk about how hairdressers and people, at the gym, like they're the ones that kind of neglect their own business. And I feel that if I'm doing marketing and branding and I don't have my own brand and I'm not really good at marketing myself, then I think that it's I think people be like, well, then why is she helping us? Why did we hire her when she can't even have her own social media up to date?
Yeah, no, and I know that most of the time that you get interviewed, people dive into that marketing side because that's what you've
Yeah.
become known for. And I've started to realize the importance of a personal brand, like the
Yeah.
fact that you're not really defined by what your job is or your career, that the brand is kind of independent from all that, and that it's
Yeah.
an avenue to help other people, to serve, to grow, to do this thing. So, how has building your personal brand or helping others impacted you beyond like an actual job?
It's crazy because I think people forget that people pay attention, and a lot of the people that pay attention are looking for motivation, inspiration, a laugh, entertainment, all of those things. Like I think sometimes we get kind of so self-absorbed with our social media and our branding that we forget like there's somebody on the other end, on the other, side of the computer or the phone that's actually soaking in what you're saying and what you're doing. And so for me, I found that the value that I essentially bring, because we all talk about adding value, adding value. And I think a lot of times people think it has to be something incredibly profound. And it has to be something that is really, what's the word I want to say, like eloquent and just like I said, like just something huge, right? And at the end of the day, I realized that the value that I bring is just making people laugh and smiling. And at first, I thought like, oh gosh, in the professional world, that's really unprofessional. People aren't going to take me seriously and I'm not going to be respected. But that's who I am. Like I'm a goofy person. Like I like to
Yeah.
make people laugh. Like I have like my sense of humor. I'm a smartass. Like that's just who I am. And I finally embraced it and started just kind of putting myself out there in that way. And I realized that like a lot of people need that. A lot of
Yeah.
people need that levity and that need that just that laughter and that positivity. And so I thought, you know what? That's what I bring to the table. And so I've really embraced it to the point where even today I did a post on LinkedIn about, my awkward, insecure self. And I mean, my elementary school picture is awful, like braces, and I had like horrible haircuts and like, I mean, awful, 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 awful. But I wanted to like utilize that in a way of like also saying, hey, a letter to my younger self. But even the letter in itself was really kind of just comical as well. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, and now you're doing this and you're, impacting and no, it was more like, hey, you're 47, you're divorced and you're living with your mom. You know what I mean? Like, and you're the self-proclaimed queen of goofiness, but you're really happy and you're grateful that, now I have like, this like great hair when my hair before was just awful. I have really nice teeth. When I had braces for 6 years, I have a fake tooth. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I try to put a spin on things where it's funny, but there's still some element of like, hey, I'm just trying to kind of like motivate others to really just embrace who they are. I think that's what it is. Like, I think what it is at the end of the day, I'm like, I just want people to be able to accept who they are and be okay with it and showcase themselves in that way. And so I try to, I guess, lead by example, if you will.
No, I think that's what's most inspiring about watching your content, is that you talk a lot about kind of just being comfortable in your own skin.
Mhm.
Um, it's what's even helped me to kind of start these projects. But how does someone, maybe even a young person or anybody, go about finding that center for themselves or love themselves enough to put themselves out there like that?
It's interesting because my mom and I were having this conversation the other day, and she was saying that she believes it's the people you surround yourself with. She's like,
Mm,
if you have people that are really, encouraging you, love you unconditionally, and really support you, then it gives you that confidence, right? Like, and it's true. I truly believe that if you're surrounded by people that tear you down and are super negative and they're insecure themselves, and like, guess what? You're probably most likely going to be the same. So I realize how the power of the people that you do surround yourself with. So I think a lot of, their younger generations, I think they feel like they have to surround themselves by a certain particular type of person
yeah,
that maybe they see as successful, maybe they see as someone that they want to be. But like at the end of the day, are those people building you up? Or are they tearing you down? How are they making you feel? So I think that has a lot to do with it. And a lot of it is just kind of trial and error, just kind of figuring out who you are. I mean, for me, it's been a lot of trial and error. Like I think we all tend to believe that once we put ourselves out there has to be a certain way and then it can't change. Like
right.
I've come to realize that my brand and my personality and just what I've done on social media has changed a lot. I haven't changed as a person. I'm the same person. I mean, I'm evolving, I am changing, but I'm essentially at the core the same person. It's just more of like, once again, realizing, as time goes and I put myself out there more and more, how more comfortable I am doing it. So then that in itself evolves. So yeah, like it's a process. That in
Of course.
itself is really a process. I mean, I'm 47 years old and I still feel like um I'm I'm trying to figure out who I am. I think that like it always that's going to be until we, go to the grave.
Yeah, no, and that's what I've come to find as well. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is that a lot of people that even seem successful are often a part of that. They're like along that journey too, right? Like the
Yeah.
only way to figure that out is to go out there, try things and figure it out and while you're doing it.
Yeah, like I think it's just a constant journey and a process. Like I don't think you ever have it figured out. I really don't. And for those that think that they do, then I don't know. I mean, more power to them. But
Well, my opinion is that we look at social media too much and we see what people present themselves to the world as. And it's
yeah.
like you kind of start to overvalue the things that you're not or what you see in other people, and you
Mhm.
undervalue the things that you already have, the skills or gifts that you already have. So I think it really is like you have to find those gifts, those skills that you have by
Mhm.
doing things. The more you
Yeah.
do things, the more you figure out what you're good at, what other people value.
Yeah, because I didn't realize I was good at any of this until well, no, I mean, being in the mortgage industry, I was doing business development, I was doing different things, and it wasn't until I had some managers at a mortgage company, and they're the ones that said, "Hey, we want you to be our brand manager." And I'm like, "What is that?" Because that was still when personal branding wasn't like this huge thing. And the fact that they saw that in me and they saw like they're like, "Raquel, you're just, we want you to help us, have a presence, so you're really good at this and that." And I love that they honed in on my strengths and they literally created a role for me with those strengths. And I'm so grateful for that because I realized like, holy crap, like this, I love this. Like, this doesn't feel like work. Like what
Yeah.
I do does not feel like work at all. Like for me, it's I feel so blessed. But once again, it's having people see that in you, believe in you, give you those opportunities. Because yeah, a lot of times people have these strengths that they don't even realize that they possess at all. And they're just like kind of just sitting there stagnant, which is unfortunate, right? Because there are so many people that have all these strengths that they just haven't tapped into.
No, for sure. And it connects back to like what you said, having those people around you, right? So not only people to support you, but also the mentors to help identify what those strengths may be.
Yeah, that's why I think mentorship is so important, because you do have kind of that outside source that's looking out, outward and being like, no, I don't think you realize this about yourself. And that sometimes that's what it takes, is to have someone else tell us.
So I want to go backwards a little bit.
Huh?
Did you, I mean, as a child, you didn't dream of getting into the mortgage industry, right?
I don't think anybody does.
So it's like, how, I'm always curious at people's path, right? So like
Yeah.
when you were growing up, what did you want to do?
I wanted to be a teacher and a mom. Like
Okay.
I've always loved kids. Even as a kid, I felt like I was very mature, that I was like a kid that liked kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was weird. And I'm still like that. That's why for me, essentially my passion project is Rock the Boat and having these conversations with our youth. And I know that, and I'm very open about this, that I know that I'm not meant to stay in the mortgage industry for the rest of my life, like I love that I'm in it and I love what I do, but I do feel like I've kind of found my purpose in life, and that is to help our youth. And so for me, you know, when I when I put myself out there, I also have to have that bigger picture and that bigger vision for myself, right? So it's like, yes, I'm in the mortgage industry, but I'm also connecting with people all around the world that are doing things that, I would love to be doing when it comes to our youth and so forth. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think a lot of people too, they tend to get scared to put themselves out there in a way where they think their employer is going to think that they're, trying to leave or find another job or whatever. And I feel, my employer, they know exactly what I do and they
Mhm.
know where my passion lies. And I think at the end, but I think that's also, beneficial to them as well. Right. Like, I think, that's why I'm okay with putting myself out there the way that I do, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that are like, oh, what are you doing? Like,
Right.
you're in the mortgage industry, have it, you're an employee. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, we all have aspirations and dreams, like, and there's nothing wrong with trying to pursue them. Shoot, if I remain in the mortgage industry for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that too. Like,
Yeah.
because I'm still helping people. Like that's what's really cool. And so like even with I have a podcast that I do every week and with Women Mortgage, and on
Mhm.
Wednesday I'm interviewing a woman that's really highly well respected in the industry. She's Gen Z, and she's talking about like next gen in home ownership, right? So it's like we're still helping the younger generations, but in this case with home ownership, with real estate. So I'm very grateful that I get to do all these things that I enjoy and I feel that are helping and making an impact. So I'm just going with it.
But that has to be a mindset thing too, right? Like you could, and other people do view it as just a job, right? Like my background, my businesses are in blue collar, like
Yeah.
plumbing, HVAC, and I think there's can be stigmas around,
Oh,
well, I just do this. That's
yeah.
all. But if you change that mindset to where, well, no, you get to go in someone's house and make their home better,
Yeah.
then it can change your perspective on your role, right? So like finding that mindset of what I'm doing is actually helping somebody, even if it's not the dream job that you always thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I see it. I'm like, I'm getting to help loan officers get out there so that they in turn get to help others, have the, dream of the American dream of homeownership
Mhm.
and create generational wealth and all those things. So that's how I see it. So that's why for me, when people say mortgage industry, it's like it does not sound glamorous at all. It doesn't sound sexy, none of those
Right.
things. But you can make it in your own little world. And I feel like that's what I'm doing.
Well, I think that's the key is making it is different for everybody, right? So like
Yeah.
you can't let someone else's definition of what success is kind of define you and what you're doing. So it's
Yeah.
about finding that happiness, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm doing that every single day with what I do. Like I really am. And I don't know what it is. Just every day I just wake up just feeling so grateful, and I take myself less and less seriously, and I just think about more and more about helping others. And it's a cool feeling when you start gaining more and more wisdom as you age.
Yeah.
You always hear it when you're younger, right? Like so many that I think that's why I do love talking to kids and our younger generation, because it's like I want them to understand that like the narrative around success and around like what it means to be happy. I think a lot of times it's still this like narrative that they feel like they have to hustle, they have to make $1 million by the age 25, they have to be entrepreneurs. Like I feel like we're in a world that if you have a 9 to 5 job, then you're kind of a loser. And I'm like,
Right.
like entrepreneurship, like there's nothing wrong with having a 9 to 5 corporate job. Absolutely nothing. And I was that person that thought like, oh, I need to be out on my own in order to like prove something.
Right.
And I went out on my own, and it was hard. It was not easy at all. And I went back. And what's funny is as soon as I went back into the mortgage industry, I didn't even feel any kind of like sense of failure or any sense of like I was letting myself down or anybody down. I was like, no, you know what circumstances are that I need to, have a salary, I need health insurance, I need the stability. And you know what? Who else is going to take care of myself but myself? And that's just kind of how I saw it. And it I don't know, there was just something very empowering about being able to go back in a way where I was like, I kind of on my own terms too. Like I feel that I'm still kind of my own boss. That's what's so cool about this too, is that my boss allows me to do what I need to do because he's like, you're good at what you
Yeah.
do it. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I don't have anybody over, like micromanaging me or saying like you need to do that. Like I love that they trust that I know what I'm doing, and they know that I'm an adult and I can, like I know how to manage myself.
Hmm.
And so there's plenty of jobs out there that you can have that 9 to 5 job, but still have that sense that like you're still kind of in control and you're still your own boss.
Well, you can also do your passions outside of that, right? Like it's
Uh,
everything you touched on is like a really big mission of mine to get that out there, that you don't have to create a $1 billion tech company to be successful in life. You don't have to be an influencer. You don't have to do those things, right? Like life isn't necessarily about finding yourself. You create the life that you want by doing all these things, by trying to do a business. If it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you failed. You just realized, kind of shift and realize what makes you happy and what gives you stability in life. And I think it's really cool the Rock the Boat show and
yeah.
things like that, where you can tell you're not taking it serious, you're not taking yourself too seriously, but that is truly just a passion project for you, right? Like doing that is gives you energy every week.
Yes. And I haven't done much of it lately. I do want to get back into it. And that's the thing, is I can do it on the evenings, I can do it on the weekends, like these conversations with these kids. If anything, they're at school anyway. So
They're
we're kind
supposed
of
to
on the
be.
same schedule.
Yeah.
So it works. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do something bigger with it one day. I really would. Like I kind of envision I would love to have like a talk show with kids. I think that
That's
would
really
be the
cool.
coolest thing, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but there's also nothing wrong with just yeah, and trying to envision it and seeing what happens. And it's just putting it out there. Once again, like there's nothing wrong with putting it out there. And I tell people all the time, like, unless you talk about it or say what you do, like no one's going to be able to read your mind and know. So I
Hmm.
can't sit here and assume that people know that this is what I, essentially would love to do with our kids. So yeah, I have to just kind of just keep speaking it and see what happens. And yeah, I'm just enjoying the journey. I really am. Like I love that. I love the unknown. I think before the unknown scared the shit out of me, excuse my language. Now the
Yeah.
unknown is like exciting.
No,
You
yeah, there's something fun about, I've always kind of like, I'll throw myself into a situation. It's like, I'll just tell someone that I can do something because and I'll just figure out how to do it. Because
Yeah.
there's something about that challenge of like, I don't know how to do this and I know I'm going to learn something and prove
Yeah.
something to myself. It's probably not the best way to do business, but
Well, there's something about being self-taught. Like
Yeah.
I'm self-taught when it comes to social media and all this stuff. Like I literally same thing, just kind of even with LinkedIn. Everyone's like, you and your LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, I've been on there for 8 years now. And in the beginning, I literally just kind of studied it. I would just scroll through and I would just try to figure it out on my own. And so yeah, even with LinkedIn, it was all kind of self-taught as well. And same thing with Instagram and Rock the Boat. You know, it's funny. I actually YouTubed on how to have a YouTube channel.
Of
Like
course.
I that's what I did. I mean, I could have easily asked so many other people that I know that have a YouTube channels, but
Yeah,
I'm like, if I'm figuring it out myself, then there's something more kind of empowering about it. And it
absolutely.
just, and you know, like the work and the effort that you put into it. So then when something does come from it, like you appreciate it even more. Like that's just how I work. You know, everyone works differently. Like, but for me, I know how important that is that I do it on my own. And yes, you know, it's I do need to ask for help here and there, and I will. It is difficult for me at times to ask for help, but I will if I need to. But I'm a very self-sufficient person, almost a little too self-sufficient sometimes, I feel like, where I'm like, okay, Raquel, you know what?
You should
you're
probably delegate.
you're not Wonder Woman, all right?
Do you find that kids um are reaching out for mentorship because of the things you've done? Has that started to happen?
Yeah, I've actually there's several kids that I've had several conversations with on Rock the Boat, and they reach out to me every now and again just to kind of like, hey, I was, you know, hoping to get some of your advice, or they just want to reconnect, which is great. What was really cool is that during COVID, I was actually speaking to a ton of organizations in India
Mm.
with college aged kids, and I ended up kind of, I guess, picking up a mentee from it. And so he and I would have calls a couple times a month. And it was just, you know, a 20-year-old who just felt like he just needed some kind of advice and just needed you know, adult kind of wisdom. And I love that about these kids, that they do want to listen as much. Like, I think that's what makes me sad, Jordan, is
Right.
that they're so willing to listen to us, but yet we're not willing to listen to them. And that's where I'm like, come on, you know what I mean? Like we have to be able to reciprocate that. We have to pay attention to them too and listen, because a lot of them are much wiser than a lot of adults that I know.
Yeah.
And a lot more self-aware than a lot of adults that I know too. Like you'd be surprised. That's the thing. That's the thing, is I was very surprised to hear just where these kids' minds are at. It's so different. Like we forget that they've grown up much quicker than we have because of social media, and they're much more aware of what's happening in the entire
Hmm.
world. And we have to acknowledge that and not essentially punish them for it. I feel like we punish these kids when really it's not their fault that they grew up around all this technology. You know, it's not their fault that their brains don't develop as quickly as they should because of, you know, technology and so forth. Like, yes, I feel like we have to feel, we need to have a little bit more compassion and empathy for what these kids are going through.
Yeah. I whenever I was growing up, I always remember people telling me like, "Oh, if I knew at your age what I know now," and I was always the type to be like, "Well, tell me what that
Well, then tell
is."
me. Don't
I,
just leave me guessing.
I don't know. I don't know if it's this superiority thing where they're like, "Oh, I know things." It's like, well, tell me those things. Let me learn from
Yeah.
you. And I think a lot of kids or youth would appreciate that insight, right?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
no, like you said, I mean, people are certainly willing to listen to advice and they want that guidance. And it doesn't have to come from celebrities, right?
No, it does not. I think if anything, it should come from the everyday person more.
Well,
You know
that's
what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because I saw an article or somebody posted, you know, you always hear those complaints like, well, nobody wants to do this anymore. Nobody wants to work
Mhm.
anymore. And they always talk about the younger generations. And it's like they found clips of newspaper articles going back to like 1896 that every generation says that. It's like, it's not
Yeah.
that this one's any different. They said it about our generation or the one
Yeah.
before us. Like everybody thinks that, and it's just not true. It's just that they're growing up differently than we did.
Yeah. No, it's true. And that's the thing, is we have to kind of evolve with the way our kids are evolving too, right? Because that's the thing, is even parenting
Mm-hmm.
styles are so different than they were before. I mean, I was brought up incredibly different than I brought up my own children. And I'm sure my kids might, if they do have kids, they'll bring them up maybe entirely different than, they were brought up. And we have to kind of respect that too, that things change. And I think we just get so stuck in our ways, and
Yeah.
and that's the thing is like, and I don't ever get into politics or anything like that, but I just feel like, yeah, like like we're not, us women, we're not the same women that we were generations ago. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the thing is just acknowledging that, that the world is changing, period. Like, I mean, they say the only constant is change.
Yeah. And I wonder if a lot of that resentment just comes from people realizing the growth, and then they're like, well, that's not how I grew up. That's not fair. Like almost like they're not comfortable with it, right?
I
Because
think it's that that they're not comfortable with it. And then it's that unknown. It's that like, well, I don't know. So how, and I think it's just, so then fear sets in, right? So a lot of that fear sets in of like, well, I don't understand our kids, so I don't know this. And like, okay, well, if you don't understand or you don't understand that person, then why don't you talk to them? Ask them questions, like be curious.
there's definitely a huge lack of dialogue that goes on.
That's what it is. It's like the lack of dialogue and the lack of curiosity. Like, I think curiosity, being curious is still so important.
Yeah. Do you, when I say kids, I guess I'm thinking of like maybe high school, college. Do you recommend to them, or, and not broadly, but putting themselves out there too? Like we think that people use social media too much, but in the way we're talking about professionals building a personal brand, do you think the young people should as well, as they're coming through that? Maybe it's through college or kind of the start of their career.
It's funny because my kids are 21 and 18 and they're not content creators. They'll like consume TikTok,
Right.
but they rarely post. If anything, my daughter is kind of anti social media. So is my son. If they actually make fun of me because I'm the one that's out there and putting myself out there and doing all this stuff. And they just kind of like roll their eyes, but they don't say anything. They used to. Now they don't make fun of me like they used to. Now they're just kind of, they realize that like it's my job and I enjoy it. And but like even all their friends, it's a hard one because I feel like there's kids that age that do it because they feel like they have to.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, right? Like you don't have to do it. Like they feel like they have to do it in order to like have an existence and be relevant. And I think that's the problem, is that if you're not on social media, it doesn't mean you aren't relevant. It doesn't mean that you don't have a purpose. But I feel like for whatever reason, we just are in that day and age where if you're not on social media, then it's like you don't exist. And I think that's where we have to like figure out a balance or a way to kind of, even for myself, I'm someone that's like, put yourself out there, also have that boundary of like, you know what? I don't necessarily have to always put myself out there. There are times where I literally am like, I just want to shut down, go to the mountains like for a week and have nothing to do with technology or social media. Cause I think psychologically, it's inevitable for it to affect us. I really do think it's inevitable. It doesn't matter how old you are. You could be young, you could be 47 and still compare yourself, still have these insecurities. So I feel there's just, I don't know the answer to the question,
That makes sense. I didn't know that there was I don't know that there is a good answer. It may just be an individual thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it
is.
It's individual. I think that's another thing too, is that we generalize so much, but everybody's so different. Even with parenting styles, like there was a connection of mine on LinkedIn, and she was talking about her parenting style and how we tend to kind of compare ourselves again as parents. And I just realized that too. I'm like, yeah, but your household is your household. Your kids are your kids. Your spouse is your spouse. Like, so you have to figure out what works best for you, not because somebody's, posting and it looks amazing that's going to work what's best. And I think that's, we also tend to lose sight of that as well, is that we're all different.
Yeah. Even not looking at social media, I think the parenting and household stuff can be hard just from parents or really close
neighborhood stuff, right? Like you go to neighborhood party, or you go to the organized sports and you talk to parents there. And I think that's something, just like you said with the articles going back to the 1800s about how every generation's getting lazier. I feel like that's never going to change either. us comparing ourselves to others and us just kind of feeling like we have to, I don't know, always give each other our opinion.
Well, it's,
I don't think that's ever going to change.
yeah. Well, and maybe we'll get better, right? I mean, because people, I myself, we lose sight of the fact that even the internet has only been around for 30 years at this point, like in a macro level. So like we were not, we did not evolve in a way that allows us to process that much information.
Yeah.
So like this new age of, so much content, so much interaction with others, I think we'll only get better at processing it because we don't even know what we're doing with it yet.
Yeah.
It's so new still.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, maybe.
And now, because I was always hesitant on social media just because it took so much time because you can get lost scrolling. And then I've always just been a private person. And then you start to see the impact that it can have for business. And then at this point, it's more about, well, I think, everybody has skills and gifts. And at some point, you do want to share that to help inspire other people. And you hope that a little bit of your journey or your story can help others. Right.
Yeah. But I think for me, it's hard because I want to do it in a way where I don't feel like I'm being preachy or I'm being like those motivational because I honestly, I'm like sick of all of that. I now actually, it's a repellent for me. Sorry, anybody that's out there, like advise it. For me personally, like I'm tired of like scrolling through and having people tell me when I should wake up in the morning, what I should eat, how I should think, how I should spend my time, how I should organize my time, how I should block my time, how I should, all these things. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I know what's best for me right now. And so I'm trying to kind of almost do the opposite. I'm that person. Like when I see when everybody's doing the same thing, I tend to kind of rebel a little bit. And that's where I'm at right now with my social media. I'm kind of rebelling. Like even when it comes to like the filters and looking beautiful and looking really pretty, I'm kind of rebelling. But it's the same thing where I'll get on there with no makeup on, no filter, and I'll do a video or I'll do a reel making fun of like, even the other night I was, it was an Instagram story. You know how there was that trend of like felt cute, might delete later. And excuse for all these, people to put these really pretty pictures and cute pictures of themselves and then like, yeah, right, they're going to delete it later.
Mm-hmm.
I was like in bed and no makeup on, just whatever. And I was like doing these like, kind of silly faces. And I'm like, felt cute. Instagram stories will delete it later. But like, I was just trying to make light of it and make fun of it of like, hey, you know what? Like, I really don't look cute, but I'm still going to post it. So that's what I'm trying to do. Believe me, there are times where, I even cringe at myself, but like, ew, Raquel, that was really cringy. Kids will tell me that. My daughter will like be like, Mom, you're so cringe. But I'm trying to kind of make a point without like saying it.
Yeah, because I agree with you. There's so many self-help gurus or like life experts, especially they look like they're 24 years old. And I'm like, even those people don't have everything figured out. And that's what I want people to start to realize is, hey, let's talk to people that, are content creators, are authors, are successful business owners, but then start to dig in and realize that they're still learning too, right? Like, and that's why I named this In Pursuit of Better, because we're all trying to get better. We're always trying to be better. Because it had some different iterations and I'm like, but it is a process and it's a journey that we're all on every day. And I think that
we can all just acknowledge that and respect that about one another. I think we'd be less judgmental and less willing to like sit there and criticize other people. And that's the thing is like, I don't, and that's where it's hard. Once again, like I'm not trying to criticize people that are doing that. I just know that for me, that's not content that I want to consume. And I have that, I at least we have somewhat control of what we do see. You don't have to follow certain people. You can block people. Your feed, the algorithms are essentially showing you what you want to see. So like, for instance, on my Instagram, most of it is the good news movement, some good news, Upworthy, those two guys that like literally will give $500,000 to the first person that's kind to them. That's what invades my feed. And that's what I love. Like that inspires me and that makes me feel good. So for me, like, I try to control what it is that I'm consuming. And so that's why, yeah, it's just everybody's different. So it's like, hey, not everyone is for everyone. That's why I know I'm not for everyone. Like I have a certain type of audience. I have an audience that appreciates my humor, understands that I'm just being lighthearted, understands that I'm just making fun of myself, and they're okay. Because there's plenty of people that can't see my content and they're like, who is this crazy person? And like, why is she, you know what I mean? And that's okay.
That's the key, right? It is okay that not everyone's going to like you.
Yeah.
Right. And that is okay. No, I think it's hilarious. And what else is unique about yours? So yeah, most of the time that you pop up, it's funny. So I'm laughing. Which is I enjoy. But then also you're not trying to sell anything either.
No, and that's
right. That's fun.
Yeah, there's no call to action. And you hear a lot of people are like, you need to have a call to action. I'm like, I don't know what my call to action would be. Like before it would be like, hey, I'm a branding, personal brand consultant. So like hire me. Now it's like I have a job. I'm super happy, really content. I don't really know what my call to action would be. So I just I'm just kind of putting it out there. And maybe that's a, bad thing. I don't know, but I'm happy about it. And I'm the one that has to go to bed with myself at night. So I'm like,
no, that's one of the things that I found so inspiring too, is like, there is no, well, click this and take my course on how to become an influencer or brand, manager.
No, and that's the thing I'm finding too, Jordan, and is that everybody now, especially in our industry in real estate, like, have you noticed that everybody, like every realtor that now has a social media presence, now they're giving social media courses on how to have I'm noticing that. And once again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like you start noticing how it's like suddenly now everybody wants to be someone that tells you how you should, gain a following or have a better presence. And I'm guilty of it because I still give courses like that for my job, right? Like I talk about it. But it's just interesting that I'm starting to see more and more just recently on my Instagram feed. I'm not joking. I think I saw 4 different real estate agents be like, hey, I'm about to launch a course on social media and how to gain a presence and a following. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But then suddenly it's like, then everybody's doing that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I think courses are great if that's the way you can learn and consume things. What I'm going to do, and I've been thinking, so like I said that I was social media like hesitant. So like on Instagram, Twitter, I have 0 followers. So I think it'd be really cool to be like, it's not a course, but I want to try and like blog or vlog about it where you can follow along, see how you go from 0 to whatever that, maybe it's only 10 at the end of it. But that'll be a real process of like, and I'll just give you updates. Here's everything I put out. And then here's now what that following looks like. Just a real world example, because that's the way I would want to look at it. Like, show me the realness, not I pay you for these hacks. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think the thing now with all of that is once people got to that level, then they realize like, oh, now I'm going to want to talk about it. But you're someone that you don't even know if you'll get to that level, but you're just going to like start doing it. Like, I think that's more effective because you're not already there. Like, that's what happens. It's people, even with myself, like once I got to a level on LinkedIn, guess what? That's when everyone wanted to hear what I had to say. It wasn't like during the process when I was, a nobody and I was just figuring it out. Like, care less. It's like once you have a name for yourself and on a platform or whatever, that's when everybody was willing to listen. So I'm interested to see how that works for you. Like I'm definitely
follow along.
Yeah, I'm going to.
No, because and it's what everybody sees, right? Like you put in 7 years of hard work to become an overnight success. Like you only see the end. That's what I want to show people, is that there's a journey. So maybe it takes 10 years to get to, and maybe it's only a small following at the end. Maybe it's a lot. I don't know. And I don't care really. I just want to show people that there's a process behind it.
Yeah, no, and that's cool because there are some documentaries that I've seen out there where, musicians, actors, or just people that are like at, this level, they literally started documenting their journey when they were nothing. And I love that because then a decade later, you get to see like, oh my gosh, like this is how it all came about. And so I love that they had that insight to be like, hey, this might we might be filming for 10 years or 20 years, but like the end result is going to actually be showing from like 0, to 52 or whatever,
And
and
maybe,
I
maybe,
think that's
maybe it's
cool.
like too much self-confidence. Like you think that it's going to be something, but maybe,
But there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in itself, right? Like when you're like, oh, I didn't get anywhere, and then you talk about that. Like, I feel
Either way, you
like
can learn from it.
like either way, it's like really cool. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think not enough people are showing that part of the journey.
Well, and that there's joy in the journey of it all. I have young children, and you start to see that it's the hard moments, and those little things that happen every day that kind of makes that whole thing a memory, or a whole thing you love it more, right? It's
Yeah.
going through all that. It's the struggle that kind of makes it worth it at the end, like you said. When you learn to do a YouTube channel yourself, if it actually becomes successful, it's that much more rewarding. And I
Yeah.
think that, I don't know, if anybody takes anything from what I do, it's just to start, because I think that's the hardest part, but it's also um, the thing that keeps you going. Right. So what I've found is, like, I've struggled with content creation, like as I'm starting to do this, like, what do you write about? What do you post about? But the more you start to do it, the more ideas you come up with.
Yeah, I truly believe that. Like
It's
that's what
weird.
happened. Yeah, it's the more so I was even really scared to do reels because like I was intimidated by everybody having like the perfect audio and the perfect like copyright to go with the audio, and I just was like, oh my gosh, I can't, I why can't I figure this out? But I want to do it so badly because it seems so fun, and I think
Yeah.
like this would be totally up my alley and my personality. And I, for whatever reason, it just like I was super intimidated by it. And it wasn't until I talked to another woman that's in the industry. She's younger. She's actually it might be Gen Z at this point, and she does marketing. And so I called her up one day and I was like, I need help. Like, you do all these reels. This is when I was able to like be like, okay, this is I do need help with this. I'm willing to like take someone else's advice. So yeah, I
Yeah.
called her up and she gave me like really good advice, some really good things that I can implement. And I started doing it. And as soon as I started doing it and having so much fun with it, then it was like all these ideas come. Now it's like every reel that I see, I'm like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. So like, yeah, it's for whatever reason, it's like sometimes suddenly you like tap into this part of your brain that you didn't realize that you had. And then it's like you were stimulating it, and then it just starts getting better and better. And so that's why I tell a lot of people too that don't worry about your stuff so much, because it's you're gonna like hone it in and figure it out.
Yeah, you'll get better, or you'll figure out what it is that you're good at.
Yeah.
But the only way you know is by doing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that I know that like have now ended up in different like lanes and different paths because of social media, because they put themselves out there and realize things that they didn't know about themselves and things that they love doing. And then it just kind of, evolved into something bigger. And I think that's where a lot of these like real estate agents, like they're starting to realize like a lot of them are content creators. Like that's another thing too. You go to your Instagram and it's like content creator, digital creator, content creator, like, and so that's the thing too, is that like I'm sure none of these people thought that they were ever going to be content creators.
Right.
Right. And then suddenly like now I'm a content creator too. uh yeah, you just never know.
Yeah, I get afraid of those terms, and this is probably just, I think I have a little bit of a rebel in me too, because you'll
Yeah.
see those like influencer or even entrepreneur, even though I own businesses, it's like, but everybody says they are now. So now I'm going to take that word out, and I'm trying to think of some other. In my mind, I'm a steward of businesses, because you're responsible for, if you have an organization, you're kind of responsible for a lot of people that work there and their
Yeah.
livelihood. So in my mind, I'm more of a steward of those businesses and to the community that they operate in. So in my mind, I want to change the terminology around it. I don't know, but I think that's just me not wanting to be bucketed with
No,
everybody
no,
else.
I totally agree. I mean, that's why years ago I changed my headline to Queen of Goofiness, because I was like,
Exactly.
that's I'd rather be kind of labeled as that as anything else, because everything will change, but I'll always remain goofy. Like, and so yeah, that's why for me I was like, okay. And that headline has stayed there for years. And some people love it, and some people are like, are you sure you want to keep that up there? But um if anything, it's a conversation starter.
Th-
You know?
Yeah, because you've brought that up a couple of times. Do you think that in any way that your not your personality, but that branding has
Uh-huh.
damaged the mortgage side of the business, like your professional credibility?
No, if anything, it's actually increased it, which is kind of weird because I think what it is, and this is where my friend Josh Pitts, who I host one of his shows, and he said, he's like, you're just unapologetically yourself, like you're you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where the level of respect came in. It was more of like, well, she's willing to just put herself out there as who she is. So we have to, in some way, respect that. Right. So, like, I think that's where I don't think it has. I mean, maybe it has in some people's eyes, but if anything, it's kind of been the opposite where I used to get made fun of for it in the beginning. Not, and this was before I was queen of goofiness. This was when I
Yeah.
first started on LinkedIn and I was putting myself out there in the industry. People were kind of like, what is she doing? Because that was before a lot of people were posting content on LinkedIn and if even like personal content. And so I think a lot of at that time there was a lack of respect and a lack of credibility and a lack of thinking I was being professional. Now it's like, now everyone realizes, not that I was like super intentional about it, but now everyone's trying to do kind of what I did. And so now it's like the roles have turned, which I mean, it feels nice. I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you're always going to have different school of thought. Like, I get that. I get that there's people in the industry that, are probably a little bit more old school and probably look at me and think maybe I am tarnishing maybe the certain image. And then I feel like then there's opposite. Then there's people that are like, oh my God, we needed this. Like, this is what we need. We need more of it.
Well, and people like to do business with someone they feel like they know, right?
Yeah.
So maybe by being so authentic that people feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Jordan, like, it was super organic, unintentional. I kind of ended up where I'm at now. Now I'm more intentional for sure, but
Yeah.
for years I had no idea what I was doing.
Nothing.
I mean, I really didn't. And so I don't know. It's just that's my experience, and that's all I can kind of talk about is my experience, but
Well,
everybody's different.
yeah, and I don't think that, we'll kind of circle back, but I don't think that personal branding has to be done with the intent of becoming an influencer for some sort of notoriety, right? Like it's really about sharing your personal gifts with everyone. And by not doing it, you're robbing the rest of us of who you are. Like if you hadn't shared that, then so many people don't get to see the queen of goofiness.
Yeah, but I think like you made a good point. Like I'm not trying to like I don't have an end goal of like how many followers or if I want to be some kind of like influencer. I don't have an end goal at that with that at all. If anything, I'm so content where I'm at now. Where yeah, I don't look at it as like, oh, I have to grow my following and I had this amount, so now I gotta double it. None of that. Like I think at one point I did feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest. I think we all kind of have that kind of thought process at some point when we're putting ourselves out there on social media or like the views and it's funny because even this morning I'm realizing more and more that it has nothing to do with how many people are watching or liking. It's really the comments, like the engagement piece of it that like for me is just everything. Like when I post on LinkedIn, a lot of the engagement I get are comments that are like this thick and they're like literally like sharing something about themselves or they're responding in a way where they actually are putting time and energy into it.
Right.
And I'm like, that's at the end of the day, what's important to me. And it could be just 5 comments, but if they're 5 really freaking amazing comments with people that I really respect, I'm like, I could care less if I had 10 views, like I'm realizing more and more how important that aspect of it is.
Like more about a deep connection
Yeah.
with the audience than a,
Deep
just
connection.
a
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, like it's building it's building relationships. Like I realize more and more that the reason why I love LinkedIn and I'm on it is because of the people that I'm connecting with and
Yeah.
building those relationships with. Like really that's truly what it's all about for me. So I have to remind myself of that every day when I do post. Because yeah, we're human. I can lose sight of things. There's days where I feel like, I'm just could be better, or this and that, or I'm comparing myself to others, or you know what I mean? Like, it's normal.
Yeah, I saw one of your posts recently that, I think it was the Oprah one where you
Yeah.
talked about like, you're guilty. You even say like, I'm guilty of this too, where you compare
Yeah.
yourself to others, but it's like, we got to get past that to some
Yeah.
degree, but you're not
Yeah.
always going to, it's not 100%, right?
No, and it's okay. Like, I kind of sit in that moment and then I do a reel and then move on. Like, it's kind of like my own therapy, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of me also reminding myself, like, hey, Raquel, like, get over yourself. Like, I think that's another thing too, is that we tend to, I think we get really caught up in ourselves and can become really self-absorbed when it comes to all of this. And a lot of times I have to put myself in check. I really do. Because there are things that I've almost posted, and then my mom will remind me, like, Raquel, remember how blessed you are. Like, it might sound like you're trying to be, but it kind of sounds like you're showing off or you're being a little bit pretentious. And she'll put me in my place. And I'm like, no, you're right. Like, I'm not going to post that. Like, there's certain things that I kind of have to, I don't know, review. Cause like, I think like I'm doing something great. And then I realize I'm like, oh, that sounded really just awful.
So do you have and this I guess is more for me, but do you have a process that you go through before posting things, or do you usually just kind of fire them off, or do you kind of create it, sit on it, and then like schedule it maybe, or how does,
I never schedule my content. It's
okay.
really much in real time. It's pretty much in the moment. If I do think of something like really late at night, I'm not going to post it. Like, I'm going to like wait the next day. But I do, like, for instance, the post that I did today on LinkedIn, I put it last night in my draft, because also a lot of times in that moment, like, I come up with what I want to say. And if I don't write it down or post it and draft it, I'll forget the next day. I think I'll remember, but I'm like, I'm getting at that age where I forget. So like last night I had it saved. So then this morning, all I had to do was post it. But that's like as far as my scheduling goes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just never been one to schedule. I don't know. I've always liked to do things in real time and kind of in the moment for myself. So there really isn't much of a process. What I have been doing is I'll go through my reels intentionally to find audio that I think would be really cool. And then I'll save it and maybe like take a little note so that like in the future, if I want to do a reel, then I have like ideas already in place.
That's interesting. Well, because
Yeah.
I see, there's a few people I follow like on LinkedIn that I feel like share a lot of details about the process of
Yeah.
creating that's helping me out. So I just thought, I'm still trying to figure out that process, right? Of how do you continually create?
I'm not very conventional. That's another thing too, is like I try to also kind of be that person. I'm like, hey, I don't do it the way other people do it and it still works. So you can do it in your own way and it can still work. Like, I try to kind of, but the consistency part of it though, that's something that I'll always say that I'm
That's
very
the key, right?
consistent about telling you need to be consistent.
Well, it's like, it's people ask how you like stay motivated, whether it be going to the gym or sticking to a diet or posting on social media, but you don't find motivation every day. It's the discipline to stay consistent about it.
Yeah. And then that's where there was one time where I literally had to I had no creativity possible. And I happened to look at a reel with like the sound of crickets. I said, when a content creator has no content ideas, I was like, and it turned into content. Like, that's what was so cool about it. And I put it on LinkedIn, and it's funny how it was cool because I had a lot of content creators and marketers reply and respond like, oh my gosh, girl, like, I feel you. Like, that happens to me all the time. Or like, I was feeling that today too. But how funny is it that you were able to create content out of not having content? So that was kind of fun because it literally was just that moment. I'm like, or even with the reel that I did with my mom.
That one was cool.
My mom. I was sitting there. I never have cake. I happened to have cake from leftover from the night before with my dad. And I happened to hear that audio. And I was like, Mom, you want to do a reel? And she's like, what? I'm like, you have an apple, right? And then it's very apropos because my mom's very like a health nut. And then she likes to criticize that I eat a little too much. just being honest. And so we did it, and then 3 takes, and then it was a reel. And it's like, I put it on LinkedIn and people went nuts. And so And that was just literally in that moment. It just like happened all within like 5 minutes.
Do people respond really a lot to your outtakes? Because I like when you post
Yeah.
the like here's the video, but here's like all the takes it took.
Yeah. I haven't done a blooper reel in a while, but just because I've been really bad. I've been deleting. Since the thing is like I have so much content on my phone, videos and pictures, and I'm constantly deleting. And so what happens is I tend to delete all the like the outtakes because I forget. And then later I'm like, shoot, I wish I had those videos because there's so many, funny bits there. Usually it's like now when I do stuff with people, I'll make sure to keep it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. I guess there's the ones I see. You do a dance or something, and it's like, no, that didn't work. But here's
Yeah.
what it looked
Oh,
like. Us trying.
yeah. So I mean, I have fun with it.
That's the important thing, right?
Yeah, I really do. Like I make myself laugh all the time. Like I laugh. I have a friend who's like, Raquel, every time you talk, you literally finish a sentence laughing. He goes, why are you always laughing? I'm like, I don't know what it is. So like, see, like talk, like literally, he's like, when you talk, you're like laughing, talking.
But that's
I don't
good.
know.
I was always, even when I was younger, I remember people asking like I never really get mad or down. Or I mean, of course you have those moments, but I've always felt like life is way too short to even have like one day where I'm going to be sad or unhappy. Like I try to stay focused on being happy. I don't know. And I think that you can find happiness in most things, or it's putting yourself in the right mindset to be happy. So laughing at the end of a sentence, it helps everybody because then it puts us in that mindset too.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I'm just a laugher.
So what's something that one piece of advice or one thought that you have that people could apply to their lives to help them along their journey?
I think just the common theme that I've just experiencing the last just a while is just not taking yourself seriously. Like really, like just realizing that it's life, and we all go through ups and downs, and it's just that's what life is all about. I mean, the other day I was watching a documentary with my mom or something on YouTube with the Buddhism. Like I love Buddhism and just what it represents, and so then one of the guys had asked this guru like, what's the meaning of life? Like, what's the purpose of life? And he goes, to live it. Like, it was as simple as that, to live it. And I think just more and more I'm realizing like just like live, just
Yeah.
I don't just we overthink and overanalyze and overcomplicate. We over everything. Oversimplify over I don't know what it is. It's like it was like everything's so excessive, and I'm actually like peeling everything back and trying to strip everything and be as like just as simplistic as possible with every aspect of my life. Like everything. My clothing,
Yeah.
gotten rid of so much stuff. I just want to like wear the same colors every day. Just like I understand why Steve Jobs and Obama and all those people wear the same clothing, because it really does kind of like it take a lot of energy out of you to decide what to wear in the morning and this and that, like little things like that.
No, it frees your mind for sure. I've done it mainly because I'm lazy, but it's like these are like Amazon t-shirts. And I get like black, gray, and navy blue. And I wear like Amazon jeans that are the same three. So I don't have to think. I just pick whatever, the same 3 or 5
Oh, I've
shirts.
got 10 Target like sleeveless like rib tank tops that I bought over the summer that were $5, black, navy blue, gray, and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just switch them out sometimes with my jean jacket, maybe a black blazer. And it's like I didn't realize like how that really does free up a lot of your energy and your like just space.
It
So
does.
little things like that. So that's what I'm starting to realize, that really life can be very simple. It really can. So I'm just trying to simplify my life, I guess. Maybe that's going to be, you know what? That's gonna be my word for 2023 is
I like
simplify.
it.
This past year it was see, I already forgot.
It must have been profound.
2 years ago was clarity.
Okay.
And then I think it was expansion. That's what it was. This last year was expansion, 2022. And then I'm thinking next year it's going to be just simplify. I don't know.
I like it.
I don't know. So
how did you expand? Were you successful in expanding?
I think so. so. I mean, I literally expand my life in the sense
Yeah.
where I was in Virginia for the last 23 years. And now I'm in San Diego, California. Like my whole life has changed. But I feel like I've expanded because I like had 23 years in the East Coast. Now I'm back in the West Coast. Like I feel like my world has broadened, my mind has broadened. Like I'm willing to just like, yeah, expand.
Did you grow? So you said back. Did you grow up in California?
Yeah, I grew up here. I'm a native San Diegan.
Nice. So
Yeah,
you're back
it's
home.
super weird. Okay, so kind of like a weird full circle moment is that we just moved into a new office and we were across the street. But what's funny is that my high school, my middle school and high school is right down the street. And the street that we're on is Frazee Road. I went to school with the Frazees, and this is Hazard Center. I went to school with the Hazards, and Hazard Center at the time when they first built it, it was like the coolest, like little new shopping mall. Now it's like, there's shopping malls everywhere, but it was like a little, like one of those like mini malls, like, but it's like weird being back here with my school down there on the street in the place of like people I went to high school with. Like, this is where I'm at. Like, yeah, it's weird. Like my high school self would have never pictured that I would end up back here. Like,
That's really interesting. So but you like being back home now after being gone?
I love it. And I'll tell you this, I'm living with my mom and I didn't know how that was going to go. And I'm almost like 4 months in and I'm going to buy a rental property and stay with my mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, why am I going to buy something when my mom's getting older? She lives by herself. We're enjoying each other's company. It's like life is short and we're enjoying the time together. And we were never very close. So this is kind of we're like reestablishing our relationship. And it's like this friendship now. It's not just like a mom daughter. It's this like really cool friendship that we're developing. And I'm just like, you know what? She's so happy. I don't need to leave. Like there's nothing wrong with living with my mom at this point.
Was it moving back that brought you guys closer together? Or
Yeah.
I'm diving into personal stuff.
No. We got closer about a decade ago when I got divorced. And it was because there was a lot of stuff that she was kind of judging me for and not like, and there was a lot of things that she didn't do as a parent or as a mother that I was resentful of. And so like we had this kind of moment one night where she said something to me that triggered me. And I was like, Mom, you were like, how could you say that? You didn't do that as a mom, as a parent. And so then she was very open and kind of was so vulnerable that for the first time, like she shared this vulnerability and this transparency that she never had before about her struggles coming from Mexico and leaving her twin sister and, being in San Antonio, Texas, where she didn't know anybody. My dad's going to, like his residency for as a doctor and how she suffered and she, like all these things that it gave me so much insight as to why she did the things she did as a mom. And so I couldn't really judge her for it because she at that time was coming from the place that she only knew how, like she was surviving. And she said she regrets and she wishes she could do things differently and all these things. But we had this moment. And from that moment on, it just like our relationship changed. And now it's getting better and better because we're becoming more open with each other and more honest about things. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to continue to grow with my mom and I'll buy a rental place and I'll rent it out and I'll just continue to live with her.
How much time do you have? Because I just thought of like 10 questions after you said all that.
Oh, I have plenty of time.
Okay. And I would seriously, if you don't, this is kind of off the topic of, but I find it very interesting. So I think I saw you talk about, or maybe it was a post, but you stayed home when you were.
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom when I was married.
So then after the divorce, you had to join the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
Interesting, because towards the end of my marriage, I was a yoga instructor and a cycle instructor, and I was teaching a ton of classes, but that wasn't I couldn't stay afloat with that. So so at one point in time, I was a yoga instructor, cycle instructor, hostess at a restaurant. And then I think I was like working for a guy that would like work from home and it was kind of like project manager for him. So I had all these like odd jobs, like nothing like stable. And so yeah, at some point in time, I was doing all of that. And it was very humbling, because I will tell you this. I lived in an area that there were a lot of stay-at-home moms and a lot of women that didn't have to work. They, would kind of just go to the gym, have their coffee, hang out with their girlfriends, and then the kids would come home and whatever. And a lot of these women and people would come into the restaurant, and here I was the hostess, like having to sit them at their table, but I just knew I needed to survive, and I wanted to set a good example for my kids. And my ex-husband and I are incredibly close. We're like very, very close. And I wanted to show him too that I could do it, that like I was stronger than I thought I was, because I was very insecure when I was married to him. I was 24 when I got married. He was my first relationship. He was my first everything. So I didn't know anything other than him. And I just was not mentally in a good place for a lot of it. I just wasn't very confident. And as much as, we love each other, and we, like I said, have a great relationship, as in a marriage, I didn't feel like I was supported, or like, I felt like at the end of the day, he just wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom for the rest of my life and raise our kids. And at some point, that's not what I wanted anymore, and and now he sees what I've managed to do, and he has said, like, Raquel, I held you back. Like, he sees the potential now, right? I think he didn't see it at the time, and now he sees it, and if anything, he respects me for it. He loves that I'm setting a good example for our daughter, especially, who's 18, of like a woman that's like not relying on a guy, that's going out there and doing what she needs to do and working hard for it. And literally, when they say work up that corporate ladder, I literally did that. I started out as a receptionist for a builder. That's how I got it. That was my first corporate job, like receptionist. And then now, it's like,
well, I find like that's the fascinating part, right? Like, so you've already said your age, so that at 37, that's when you
35.
actually.
So at 35, I got divorced in 2010.
So you start this career at 35. Like, kids that are 24 and think, well, I don't have these things going on yet. It's like, it's never too late.
Yeah.
And you're still
well, and that's the thing, is like, I, especially as the mom to a young girl, or young lady, she's not a young girl, young lady, is that, like, I also want young women to see, like, age 47 doesn't mean that it's like the end of the world and like your life is over, and you know what I mean? Like, if anything, that's something too that I kind of see for myself, is to be someone that will always kind of be maybe a role model in that respect, of like, hey, you can remain young, you can still do all these things. Like, don't let age, define you, or don't let it stop you. Like, I do feel that, like, that, I have a lot of energy and a lot of just, I feel like they still have a lot to do still in life.
And speaking of empowering women, your mom, you said she moved from Mexico. Was that with your dad, or was it just she came from Mexico?
No, she met my dad in Mexico, and she followed him out here, and she, was born and raised there. She did go to parochial school in the States, so she knew the language, and all of those things. But my mom's kind of an exception in the sense that, and this is like a whole nother, talk, but she didn't come over here illegally. She came from a very well-to-do family, very well educated. They all have several languages that that they're fluent in. They've studied all abroad. They're like business owners, or all these things, right? And so, like, being half Mexican, I grew up very prideful and not embarrassed, like, because of that. Like, I spoke Spanish as my first language, so I always had like this sense of pride, when unfortunately there's a lot of people that didn't have that because of the way their upbringing was, and just, and so for a long time, I just never really talked about it, because I felt like, who am I to say anything? Because I was very privileged. But I feel like because I was very privileged, and because I grew up differently, I also have a responsibility to be like, hey, not all cultures are the same or come here the same way, right? Like, kind of trying to change the narrative in that regards too.
Yeah, no, I think because that's the first thing you think of when you say that, is that, well, that can't be right, because the only thing we hear is that everybody comes over
trekked
illegally.
over and then came over illegally and hopped the fence, and you know what I mean? Like, and had parents that struggle. No, like it was completely the opposite. Um, so yeah, so that's why I'm kind of like,
No, that's awesome.
everybody has the same, same. But that's why, yeah, it's just learning all of those things, right? Like learning that it's like that shame of certain things, like you gotta kind of let that go. The shame that I was depressed in college and I attempted suicide, there was a lot of shame behind that, so I never talked about it, never shared it, and now I do, and realize like how important that was. Like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
Well,
as you
that's
you just realize like that was my life. Like,
well, and every traumatic experience, whether it be an attempted suicide, a divorce, there's learning in it, but it's all about how you come through it, right? I
mhm.
mean, so do you think that going through those different things helped you when those experiences came later? Like just realizing that you can overcome depression help you once you realize your marriage isn't maybe what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah. Yeah, like going through all these things, it just has made me realize like how strong I really am, and
Yeah.
how once again it's life. Because I think a lot of, I know for me growing up, I felt I was almost made to, I was like kind of made to believe that life was supposed to be easy, in the sense that like not easy, but like you were supposed to go through it in a way with grace and like figure it out. I don't know. I don't know why I had that narrative in my head. So anytime something bad happened or I didn't feel good about myself, I thought like, oh, I'm not doing life right. Like I suck at life. Yeah, like I don't know what it was. And now I just realized like, no, that's that's what happens. Like shit happens. I
Did
don't know.
you did you get help in college? Like how what was the biggest thing that helped you get through that?
Um, well, that was like kind of the hard part, was that I was already going to therapy and I was on antidepressants. And I truly believe, and I know there's class action suits against this particular antidepressant, but I truly believe that all those suicidal thoughts came from that pill. And so I
Interesting.
stopped. And so I tried to OD on my pills. Like I took them all. So what happens is like the first thing you do is no more pills for you, right? And then I was already going through therapy, and clearly that wasn't helping. So, and that was a whole, whatever. And so for me, it was, I don't, I really don't know what it was. I just know that I think I had to just like literally baby steps every single day, just kind of like get out of that mindset. And I don't know why I was able to and how, because I've had people ask me and I'm like, I don't know. It was a fog. It was all fogged and very cloudy for me at that period of time. Like I don't even know how old I was. I don't know what year it was. I don't know what
Wow.
month it was. I just know that I was in college. It was my fourth year. Like it's all kind of a blur. So I don't really know how I snapped out of it.
Do
I
you know
just,
what led to it?
a lot had to do with my childhood, and a lot of the family dynamics, and the fact that I was like a perfectionist and I had OCD, like, and in my head I had this narrative that I had to be the perfect child because I was treated perfectly and I was a good child, and I just, this whole perfectionism, and when people try to be perfect and they realize they can't, like there's and I felt unworthy, undeserving, and like all these things that
Yeah.
it's normal for a teenager to feel. Except I just, I really believed it enough to, be like, no one's, like people are better off without me. Like that's how I honestly felt. I'm like, oh, the world's better off. And now I realize like, oh crap, like, you know, like, ouch.
Ouch, in the sense that
Yeah.
that's a scary thought, or that that's not
Well,
true.
it's scary that anybody would ever feel that way.
Yeah.
Like that's where it's like, gosh, like there's so many people that feel that way, and so many people that actually follow through, um and it's tough because it's, I think a lot of people want to like be able to pinpoint why, and then people want to understand like how could you even get to that place. It's like, I don't know, because I went to that place and I've been there, and it's like it sucks and it's scary and it's awful, and because I know that, I don't want to ever go back to that place, but I know that people have gone back to that place. So it's like it's just it's hard because right now suicide rates are so high, among teens, like so high. And it's like, how do we stop it, right? And I think there's just a lot that has to be done. It's not just like one thing, so many things. But I think that we need to be able to talk about it more and be more open about it. And that's something too that like I want to be able to share my story even more so, but to teens like directly. Like, I share my story all the time on like podcasts like this and on lives, but like I don't know, I would love to be able to get in front of teenagers at schools and organizations and really kind of like share my story, but do it in a way where they realize that there is hope. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of times when people do speak to kids, it's because they already lost someone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I think there needs to be more of us that are suicide attempt survivors that are thriving now and doing okay, and have us kind of be more vocal about like how we've managed to kind of overcome and get to a place where we are. I feel like that's really important too.
No, you have me in deep thought, because I've struggled with what I want my message to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so young people always pull at my heart for some reason. And I think it's some way of educating them that, life is hard,
Mm-hmm.
but, success in that can mean many things. And you have to find what that means for you.
Yeah.
But how, again, like same question, how do we get in front of them to catch them before they get to those points of no return?
Yeah. I mean, that's what's hard. And, I try to do that with the social network with Rock Vision when I started with a friend. And the hard part was that, all the parents loved our idea, right? Like they loved the concept of having these interactive rooms and having these, like adults in there facilitating them, talking about like their story, motivating all these things, right? And creating this like sense of community and the safe space for these kids. But it's having the kids see the value in it because it's TikTok, it's Snapchat, it's Instagram, it's what everybody's doing. It's like, it's the masses. And so it's like, it's for kids to be the ones to go out on their own and kind of go rogue and be like, ooh, I'm going to, get on Rock Vision because it's a really cool place. And then I'm going to talk about it. Like, that's the difficult part, right? Because like I said, all the parents wanted their kids on there, but then how many kids are like, oh, my parent wants me to be on here. Well, then I don't want to be on here. Because if they think it's cool, then it's not cool.
Maybe it's and again, this is off topic. Maybe it's like some sort of organization that uses people like yourself, maybe people that already, because kids would find people that have like following interesting.
Yeah.
And it's like, then somehow we get into schools to say, let's have a talk. Like, look, here's someone that is influential, is an influencer, but in a way that's different than what you're typically seeing, and realize that there's positive influences out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd also have to, I understand I need to be proactive too, but once again, no, but that's the thing is, I have a job. I want to be respectful to, my job and there's only so much I can do, right? But it's like, I also understand how I do have to be proactive, put myself out there, talk about it, put the, like do all of those things. And there's still a part of me that is still, there is that fear of success, of all of those things, of being bigger than I don't think I'm big, but like having like a bigger presence, like a lot of that still frightens me.
That's so funny you say that. So have you always struggled with the fear of success? Like
always.
This is going to sound crazy. I don't even like saying it out loud, but like there were times like I played sports and it's like, you just want people to be happy or something. Like I was a people pleaser, but it's like those times where events or tournaments get so big, it's like, I don't want to be the one with the attention and be that successful. It's like, I'd rather just almost lose. Like it's kind of sad to say. You'd almost rather lose and keep yourself in that comfort zone.
Yeah. No, I'm like that a lot. Like, I think what happens is then I start thinking like, oh, I'm like being selfish, or I'm attention seeking. And that's not like, it's funny because I had an energy healer session. I've never had that. And I had it during COVID. And so it was over the phone. And he said something that really like kind of was like, oh my gosh. He goes, Raquel, people think that you like, because you're kind of bigger than like you have that personality. He goes, but deep down inside, you don't want that attention. You understand that you need to get that attention in order to help. Like my ex said something too along the lines where he goes, he goes, I forget what he said. He's like, you're a narcissist. He goes, but you're the most generous, or like you're a narcissist because in a way that, but you're trying to help others.
Yeah.
He goes, so it's like you're seeking all that attention and you're wanting all of that, but it's essentially to be redirected. And so that's kind of like what this energy healer was saying. Like at the end of the day, like you don't want it. You just understand like the importance of it in order to help others. And so it's like that weird, it's like a weird dichotomy, you know what I mean? Like, and so for me, I think that's what I struggle with is like, I understand having that success and being out there and helping more, you need to have that. But at the same time, like at the end of the day, that's not what I'm trying to help others. So I want to be able to like back off at some point, but it's like, you can't if you want to. It's this very weird thing that I struggle with internally almost every day, to be honest.
Well, that's been the biggest hesitancy for me to even start, because you're asking for a following. So you're asking for attention, but the intent behind it is to just push it back out. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? Like it's weird. It's a very weird headspace to be in.
Yeah.
And, you know, and even my kids, like there came a point where my kids were like, Mom, you realize that every time that we're together, you like talk about yourself and your career, and like they're like, we don't care. But then I also realized too, a lot of it, and even my ex-husband had to kind of, you know, point it out, was like, Raquel, you've always sought validation too, because you've always never felt valued, never felt worthy. And so it's like, he goes, but you don't need to seek it from your kids and from me. He goes, we know your value. We know your worth. You don't have to seek it from us. And that was like a really profound thing too. And so I feel like that's another thing too, is I feel like I constantly have to be validated. So it's also that like, it's the same thing, like doing it so that I'm validated as well. And that that part of it, I feel like is also kind of stems from all of my childhood stuff and everything as well. So like, we're very complex people, like people are very complex. So I think that's why I'm trying to simplify my life, because I'm just
no, but the more, and this was like one of the biggest things I thought that I'd get from this is I literally just wanted to talk to people. Like I love talking. And the more I've done it like this, the more I realized that we all have there's similar framework to what drives us and what motivates us. Like, did you hide, and maybe this is different, but being of Mexican descent, did you hide from that growing up in America? Like, or from your, like you didn't embrace that,
see,
right?
that's the thing, is it was fully embraced, because my mom,
okay.
Yeah, I was born in San Diego, literally on the borders right here.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of Mexicans in San Diego. If anything, it was more of that identity of like, how to identify, what kind of Mexican do you identify? Okay. People realize even within the community, there's also kind of some stigma with, you know, class, all that stuff. Like people don't like, it's still
every group has their
every group has that. So for instance, me growing up, my mom, once again, very proud, because she came from a very well-to-do, very well-known, my family's very well-known in Mexico and very well-to-do. Like that's just, it is what it is. And so for her, she had this great pride of like, why am I going to be ashamed of that? And so she instilled that in us. Like Spanish was my first language. I spoke it. I still speak it all the time. As often as I can speak it, I speak it. I love speaking the language. Never been ashamed of it. And so for me, I didn't have that. If anything, and I'll admit to this, when people would be like, oh, you're Chicana, I would actually get offended by that. And the reason why I would get offended by that term was because in San Diego, Chicanos, or in the LA area, their parents were from Mexico, came over, like immigrated over here, and the kids are born here, but they've never been to Mexico. They don't speak Spanish, but yet because their parents were Mexican, they still aren't accepted as Americans, even though they were born in the States. So like Chicanos had like this crisis, this identity crisis. And that's how that culture was created too. It's because they were in this in between of like, we were born in the States, but our parents are Mexican, but we're not accepted as Mexicans because we don't know the language, we've never been, but we're not accepted in America because we have Mexican immigrant parents. Like,
yeah.
And so when people would say that, I would get offended because I was like, I've been to Mexico. I go twice a year. I know Spanish, fluently, like all these things. So growing up, it was also kind of that struggle.
Well, I asked because I'm mixed race and I struggled with that identity crisis for a long time because it felt like you weren't accepted by either in some cases. And then I grew up in very rural West Virginia. So
Oh, wow.
I was, well, like it sounds like it'd be worse than what it was. I mean, there was incidences of racism, of course, but you have that everywhere. But I just remember, especially like in college, when I got my first experience around a lot of other, Black people or, mixed race, that you start to realize, well, they don't accept you either. So then you're like kind of lost. And I remember it being somewhat dark where it's like, I don't know who I am because again, I'm a people pleaser. So it's like, you want people to like you. And so it's like, well, which way do I go? Which race do I adopt as my own? And then you start to realize as you get older that you just be yourself, right? Like, and there's not a right answer to that. And there's not, people are always going to judge or not accept you.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing is I have light eyes. I have green eyes. Like my dad's Eastern European. He's Russian, Romanian Jew. So I have the light eyes, the nose. So I don't look Latina. So me, when I speak Spanish, I shock the hell out of people. So it's like, in the Latina culture, I'm a white Latina. Like, I mean, once again, there's like the color of your, skin thing is also relevant within the community. So for me, I never had any kind of struggle with it, but I have learned that I think a lot because it has to do with, I don't fit in that box, right? I mean, I've been in situations where I've seen discrimination against Hispanics in a way because they looked it, and I stepped in and I'm like, guess what? I'm Hispanic, and I started speaking Spanish, and they get all shocked and they get all like, and I'm like, and it would make me sad. It made me realize like, wow, like, I can't sit here and say anything because I just have never experienced that.
Yeah. Well, you get that. I remember hearing in West Virginia in particular, you get that. Well, you don't talk like you're Black. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
I don't. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can certainly letting other people, make your identity for you is dangerous, I guess.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, it's hard because like my son, and this is kind of, my ex-husband's more Latino than I am. He's Cuban, Puerto Rican, Spanish, and our son, he looks Latino. Like you look at him, and he grew up in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is a very wealthy county, and so he's also was molded in a certain way where he didn't really want to identify as a Latino because he saw that most of them were the ones that were the workers, working at the restaurants, all those things. And so for him, I just looking at that, and it's hard because I'm a very proud Latina, like super proud. And I'm always like owning it and talking about it and trying to, and especially being in the DC area, doing a lot of nonprofits and Hispanic organizations. And I would do a lot. And it's like hard when you have your own children not wanting to speak the language, and your kids kind of not really identifying with that part of your family. Like it is hard. But once again, a lot of it's the environment, a lot of it's your surroundings, and so that's kind of, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of elements that go into it, but like at the end of the day, I'm all about just being kind and respecting everyone. I don't care what you look like.
Oh, well, we should all be more like that.
Yeah. Well, I try to instill that in my kids, like at the end of the day, I'm like, just be a kind person and respect people.
Yeah. Do you get asked to do a lot of things on the business side? I don't know what I'm trying to ask here. The reason I ask is because I'm so entrepreneurial and I get scatterbrained that when you sit there and talk about getting into schools, I'm like, oh, we could start some sort of nonprofit where we have all these influencers. They go into schools and talk. I just get all excited
Yeah.
every time I hear
Yeah.
something new. And I could imagine people come to you with like things like that.
Not as often as you think, because once again, I don't think I put it out there enough. Yeah. I mean, I don't really, when people like want to do keynotes and they want to do this, like they're very, most people are very vocal about it. Like, I'm a keynote and I want to be a keynote and I want to do this. And I just don't, once again, it's that kind of
Yeah, I'm not that.
yeah, it's, I know it's,
Well, I talked to someone.
the struggle is real.
Yeah. Cause I talked to someone recently that's their tag thing, was a keynote speaker in their cover thing. But
Yeah.
it's like, that does sound interesting. And I think I would enjoy talking to people, but I don't want to claim that I'm a keynote speaker because I don't even know what that means. Like,
I know.
who
That's
would
another
want me
thing
to talk
too.
to
It's
them?
like, yeah, keynote. Keynote speaker, that's a very broad thing. You could be a keynote speaker to 10 people, keynote speaker to 1,000 people. But if you're
Right.
the speaker, you could say you're a keynote speaker, just like with, best-selling author, you could be, like,
I've seen that one too.
yeah, yeah. And then, all the magazines, like you can pay to be on the top four, for whatever, all that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like, at some point it's like, all right, it's right. But, so I don't know. I just, I would love to do a TEDx talk. I would, like, bridging the generational gap and kind of doing that. Like, that is something, I guess on my bucket list.
I'm gonna nominate you for a TEDx. I don't know how that works.
I don't either. I put it, it's funny. I have a friend that did a post about it, and I had a couple of people reach out to me, and there's coaches out there, but that's another thing too, is like, if you want someone to guide you, it's like thousands and thousands of dollars. And a lot of times it's like, I don't have the money to do that. I just need some kind of guidance and some kind of just, advice, but I can't afford to sit here and, hire someone to get me there.
Onto
Or
the TEDx stage, yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, we kind of talked about that last time, where it's like we have these like, I have this idea for a consultancy, but I don't want to charge anybody for it. It's
yeah.
like that it just doesn't work. It's like
Yeah.
you do need money sometimes.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, it's the money part. And I think unfortunately that's what just stops a lot of people. I know. I'll figure it out. Like,
Oh, I know you will.
yeah, like I'm confident enough in myself too to know that, like, it might be a little bit kind of, weird right now and scary and all this stuff, but I'm confident enough to, I'll figure out a way.
What is the scariness back to the fear of the success? Like, because you're at a point now where it's like those next steps are bigger.
Yeah, I feel like I've been kind of at a crossroads for the last couple of years. Like, I've been right there, and it's like, it's just kind of just knocking, just like shattering that one last, glass. Like, I feel like I'm there, and it's just that shattering that, just like in Willy Wonka, just kind of that,
do you feel a pull to do it?
do I feel
do you feel pulled, like drawn to do that, to get through that glass?
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is like, I feel like I have so much potential and so much to offer. And once again, like, I don't want it to sound like it's like this, but coming from like an egotistical place, but it's coming from a place of like, I feel like I've gone through what I've gone through and all these experiences for a reason. And that reason is to be able to help our youth. Like, I really, truly believe that if I could help, just one kid or just something, right? And so I know that I have that capacity, that ability, and that potential. I feel it in my heart of all hearts. I really do. It's just, like I said, there's just something there that I just cannot pinpoint as to, there's just something holding me back. And I just really, maybe it is a success. I don't know.
It may just be the timing, right? Like, sometimes it feels like we don't, like, there may be a bigger plan, right? Like, maybe it'll break through when it's supposed to.
And that's how I, like, sometimes I'll think about that too. I'm like, Raquel, maybe there's a reason why it's not happening right now, because there's something else there that you don't even know exists, that's there, that is waiting for you. And you're just, like, it's going to happen. You just, it takes time, because nothing happens overnight. So then sometimes I feel like, okay, Raquel, just trust the process, because there's something there that you can't even imagine, right? Because I couldn't even imagine I'd be sitting here today telling you that I had rocked the boat, that I've done this, that I've done that, that I'm like envisioning, like you, not even like 2 years ago, I would have envisioned just me in this moment talking to you and the things that I'm saying and envisioning. So that's why I have to just
No,
trust.
I'm the same way. Cause I was afraid, like I don't know what it was, probably afraid to reach out because you don't want to get rejected, like to ask
Yeah.
people to have these conversations. And it's like so I made a list of, yourself included, of like, just like, all right, there's 10 people, let's say, that, you see and inspire you. Let's reach out to them and see what happens. And it's like, by you responding, it's like, oh crap, now I have to do it. And what's to stop me from reaching out to more?
Yeah. No, and I appreciate it. Like it's super humble. No, it's super humbling when people like do want to listen to what I have to say. And I have to tell you, like, this is like, I almost feel like, this has been like the best therapy session for me in a really long time. Like, this is good. Like, I don't think you realize like what a gift it is for that other person too. Right. Like, I think you're thinking like, oh, you want to talk to them because you want to, have your audience this and this and that. But I don't think you realize like what you're doing for someone like myself
Nope.
as well. Yeah, like me, like I'm even having like light bulb moments in my head as I'm talking to you, like, because we've been speaking for a good hour and a half. And so we've really managed to like tap into a lot of different subjects and things that like I just haven't really thought about in a really long time or just at all. And so this is a gift to me. Like, so I just want you to know that. Like, so I really appreciate it. Like, this is doing a lot for me too.
Wow. I that blows me away for you to say that.
No, because you're giving me a safe, you're so like your strength, just like I feel like I can do for others, is giving them that safe space to like be themselves. Like you're doing that for me. Like, and it's not often that many people can do that. So the fact that you are doing that, like, thank you. Because yeah, when I'm used to doing that for others, to have someone to do that for me, it's kind of like, oh shit. Like, this is really cool.
Well, and even to this day, I feel like I don't know what my strengths are. So that's very helpful for you to say that. But people have always told me that it's like, I'm easy to talk to. And I have always, well, it's because I don't take myself serious and I like to find joy. I always felt like, but it is, now that people have said it, I'm like, I'll start to pay attention. And you do realize that even in like first interactions, people, I think it's because I enjoy it and I actually want to get to know you. And now I feel like we're best friends.
Yeah.
And I probably come off as too much. That's why the first interaction's good, because after that I'm gonna be like, Raquel, since we're best friends now.
No, that has to start somewhere,
Yeah.
right? Like, and you're a really good listener. You're a really good
I'm
listener.
gonna record that and show it to my wife.
Yeah. No, but because even the way you're listening, like, people can listen, but it's like you can tell they're listening and they can't wait to like say the next thing, and they can't wait to like cut you off and say something about themselves. Like, no, you're like you sit in it.
Well, I want to learn. I actually want to hear what you have. I think that's the difference. And I think it's because because I've listened to podcasts to try and get inspiration. And I'm like, I don't like the way they're doing it, because I feel like they're trying to talk about themselves. And I'm like, but I actually want to hear your story. Like, I actually care about what you have to say.
Yeah.
Which is weird, I think, which I didn't realize was weird, but it is weird that people care about other people's stories and thoughts and whatever.
Yeah. And even people that like have me to hear their story. Like, I love it that I host Women That Shred every week, because I love that I get to share someone else's story and have it be all about them. And then I'm the one that gets to actively listen. Like, for me, that's taught me a lot as well. And I absolutely love it. Like, I'm enjoying it so much, where it's literally all about them.
When you're doing it live too.
Yeah.
I hope to get there someday. Like, that'd be cool to do a live stuff, but that seems scary.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised, like how, and not only that, like you have people interact. So it's like people are engaging in the comments too. Like, that's super cool too, to have people in there like asking questions. And so it's a lot. But I'm loving it. Like, I realize that I love being a guest and being a host.
Yeah.
I love to talk. Let's just be honest.
Me too. And that's where I like my goal with it. I hope to be able to like, shed light to other people too, like shine that, get the attention, but to be able to shine the light. Like, look, here's a very cool story from Raquel. Like, go and look at her things, because that's an inspiration to me, and hopefully it helps you too. But the only way to do that is to, right, try and gain that following.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
You started from the bottom, now we're here.
Now you got me dancing.
Yeah,
No.
but thank you.
No,
Seriously.
thank you very much for the time, for the conversation.